Hi Kia listeners, let's learn sumo. I'm Clayton. Welcome to the podcast, the last one for 2025 as we go into 2026. You can join me on X and Instagram, even YouTube where this is restreamed. There's also a few new video episodes there from late this year. More to come, so you can drop me a message or comment on any of those platforms and I will respond. If you like my content, you can donate to my Kimboshi fund, help pay for a few of the subscriptions that keep the channel going. Buy me a coffee link is in the comments, or you can just enjoy the podcast. Look, it's a bit late, but here we are with my Fight of the Year episode. The video version of this episode is on YouTube now with all the fights in video, but for my listeners who aren't able to watch the videos, this is the audio version with descriptions of each of the fights just for you. It's been a big year in Grand Sumo. We've had 2 Yokozuna promotions, a London tour, and a meteoric rise of new Rikishi to the rank of Ozeki, a Ukrainian at that. There have been many good fights this year, and I can't name them all, so this is just my list for 2025. Let's start first up with a little bit of fun. The most embarrassing loss. There were a few this year, but I do love a good suradashi lift out. There are defenses if you can get in there quick enough, wrap your legs, things like that, drop your weight backwards. Like Kirishima last year, however, it does look awful when it happens to you. Midori Fuji, he faced the other pocket rocket in the field, Fujinokawa, on day 5 in July. Look, after a pretty good touchy-eye, Midori Fuji let Fujinokawa get both of his arms inside on the body. Fujinokawa used his hands to get around onto the belt at the rear. Now, Fujinokawa is about the same weight as Midori Fuji. It's within a few kilos. They're both about just under 120 kilos, so it's easy for him just to lift Midori Fuji straight up in the air. Midori Fuji's legs start to wiggle as he is defenseless to the suradashi lift out, as Fujinokawa has both hands on both the belt, leans back, lifts him up, walks him to the bales. An ignominious loss for Midori Fuji for the embarrassing loss of the year. One of my viewers, BC Tass, reminded me that Tochinoshin used to do the same fairly regularly. Did one to Enho. No, I think it was day 4 in January 2020. I went back and watched that one, and Enho is not so small, so good lift out there. Most brutal fight. Look, there were quite a few brutal wins in the past year. Takayasu dished out some real punishment with his Sapari thrusting, a real figure of his skill base. But for me, 2 very large wrestlers, Abe and Yokozuna Onosato, showed the sheer power required. It was day 3 in September. Abe just came out of the touchy-eye with his usual double nodowa on the Yokozuna, who just absorbed it and moved Abe to the side, back to the bales, and then the Yokozuna showed immense power to simply double thrust Abe across and airborne down, landing on the bales. Now, I've seen Abe in person. He is an immensely large man. He stands taller than me. I'm 184. He's 188 centimeters, and he is 164 kilos. It is not a small person for the Yokozuna, and for him to simply thrust him sideways, causing Abe to go airborne and fly to the side and down at the bales, that is incredible power and a brutal thrust from the Shin Yokozuna at that time. Best Kimarite, look, it has to go to Ura, who pulled off his signature but fairly rare move, the Su Te Zori. Not once, not twice, not 2 different Rikishi, but to the same poor old Takayasu who bore both efforts. Now, it's a hard Kimarite to describe, an even harder one for me to say. Su Te Zori. Day 4 January, Ura goes in low, gets a left arm inside and wrapped around Takayasu. Takayasu went for an overhand right belt over the top of Ura, as Ura then drove his head up into the left armpit of Takayasu. Now, I'm sure that Takayasu had no idea what Ura was trying at this point. Ura was fairly low, got his head right up in with the left inside belt on the other side. Now, as Ura had his head in the armpit of Takayasu, Takayasu was leaning over his back and kind of leaning to the right a bit. Takayasu had his left hand holding Ura around his armpit, which then Ura pulled further under his armpit. Now, that was a fairly strategic error for Takayasu to pull him further under his armpit, because Ura used that position to pull himself under the armpit, twist at the same time and pull Takayasu's other arm forward under his own weight. Now Takayasu then obviously goes forward, being twisted. He had no defense to that. Ura twisted out of the way, holding Takayasu's left arm, pulling it through. It was an incredible piece of flexibility, very fast, all-in-one motion. The underarm, forward body drop, let's try it again, to Teizori. But not to be outdone by himself, Ura and Takayasu face off again on day 11 in May. A good touch-eye as Takayasu tried a Butskari chest push on Ura, kind of drove him back, sliding across the bales to the bales. Long arms that Ura had to keep him away from him. Ura then drove in and they thrust at each other, and Ura just kept dodging. So there was a lot of thrusting, a lot of dodging, and then Ura drove his left arm into the belt, his head up under the right armpit of Takayasu. Now we've seen Midori Fuji try very hard to get inside and get his hand up under the armpit and shoulder of many an opponent who subsequently panic when they know they're being set up for the kata sukashi and they're trying hard to stop it. Now I'm sure Takayasu might have had a moment of panic here too, as he realised where Ura's head was. Ura then drives hard as Takayasu moves laterally, and he's up against the bales with his weight leaning on Ura. Now as he feels Takayasu's weight on him, Ura then drives under the armpit, pulls down on the arm, pushes back all the same time, real bending push back as Takayasu is committed with his weight forward, and he goes down. Another Tsuzeizori. Now I can't go on without mentioning the other Kimarite, which made a huge impact this year. Aya Nishiki has single-handedly made the Uchimuso popular again, the inner thigh propping twist down. Simply put, Aya Nishiki is excellent at putting his opponent's weight into a low, almost Greco-wrestling, European wrestling position. They're both really over towards their weight heavily distributed forward, very much with one leg forward, supporting themselves on the opponent. Now, Aya Nishiki has a belt grip on one side, and with a deft hand, he just smacks the inner knee of his opponent, and at the same time, he pulls the belt, forcing them to twist and either fall down on their knee or go over entirely. Now, he's beaten Midori Fuji first, using the belt to pull and twist Midori Fuji over. Next, in July, on day 1, he got Kodazakura, who went down front ways onto his knees, followed by Kirishima in July. And then September saw a move which it looked all the world like an Uchimuso on Atami Fuji, but it went to a rematch, so Kimarite was never attached to it. He did, however, get Atami Fuji in London with a move, an Uchimuso on day 1. Just an aside, I did notice in London that while most of the other bouts were fairly performative, the wrestlers did try fairly hard against Aya Nishiki, because I think he was very winning a lot of matches, and they were trying to get one over on him, so there's a bit more feeling in those ones. Anyway, to finish the year, Aya Nishiki repeated the feat against Kodazakura on day 15, who fell for it again. Of note, though, Takayasu defended against the Uchimuso in July, only just. He did almost go down, and he eventually got an Uwatanage overhand belt throw on Aya Nishiki. Not a lot of power required for that Kimarite, but a good sense of your opponent's weight distribution and a hand on the other belt, and you've got it there. So, on to fight of the year. I couldn't let this year go without mentioning the fight that had everyone talking. Ura, of course, against Wakamoto Haru. It was pure chaos by Ura. Ura tried a henker, tried to grab Wakamoto Haru's arm, but Wakamoto sees it, drives him back to the bales, and Ura's just in a very poor position. He's facing the crowd, and as he's facing the crowd, Wakamoto Haru is pounding on his back, but Ura does a big spin, escapes back into the ring. Ura goes ultra low, tries to come up on Wakamoto Haru, but escapes again and moves laterally. Then Ura simply assumed the put your jukes up stance like an old-time boxer, which of course is hansoku, or would be a foul if he threw a punch. Wakamoto he just stands there in disbelief for a few moments. He's not sure what's going on, but he was patient. Ura then threw his arms forward like he was trying to re-engage and catch Wakamoto Haru's arms. He then goes in, grabs a left inside body on Wakamoto Haru. Wakamoto then drives him back to the bales. Ura tries moving laterally again and retreats across the ring. He then tries to drive his head up under Wakamoto Haru's arm. You could see he's trying for the Tuzezori, underarm forward body drop that made it work on Takayasu, but he can't get the grip on the arm of Wakamoto, and he's forced down at the bails. Oshi Taoshi. People are entertained at the Ura Big Show. A worthy entry to Fight of the Year. Next up, Midori Fuji versus Tsuranumi. Look, it's a long fight which demonstrated some pretty good persistence by Midori Fuji. Midori Fuji went for the grip off the tachiai but missed it. He drives Tsuranumi back to the bails with an oshi, gets a right inside grip at the bails. Midori Fuji has his left side but at the armpit, and Tsuranumi locks his hand up. Midori Fuji breaks it, drives his left hand to the back, to the belt. Tsurunumi's in trouble. He's got no grip on Midori Fuji as Midori Fuji holds him. Then Midori Fuji withdraws, lets go of the left and drags with his right. He's trying the Dashinage throw, tries the big Oshi drive. Ura defends. Midori tries again. Big Dashinage pull and a drive, no effect. They lock up and they held for a little while. They leaned on each other as they both sought to get a hand position. Midori Fuji then pushes Tsuranumi up and tries to drag him Dashinage again, but no effect again. They lock up again, and Midori Fuji tries the drive and drag 2 and then 3 times, but Tsuranumi holds it, and then a 4th time and a 5th time, and Tsuranumi defends. But then on the 6th go, Midori Fuji does a drag and drive, which put a very worn-out Tsuranumi off balance for the push-out Yorakiri win. Finally, real endurance battle, and both of these guys are totally gassed, but poor old Tsuranumi, he can only defend so far. A really good fight. Another finalist. On to my fight of the year. Look, I chose this fight both on the excitement level at the time of the fight, the context of the fight, and how it could have gone either way. January, day 15, we saw 3 Rikishi into a 3-way playoff for the Yusho, and more importantly, a playoff we haven't seen in a while. Hoshoryu as Ozeki at that time, coming out of November with a Jun Yusho 13-2 record as an Ozeki. The Yokozuna Council already indicated that a Yusho in January would put Hoshoryu in strong contention for Yokozuna promotion. So he faced Kimbozan on day 15 after drawing straws, I should say. So to win the playoff in a 3-way playoff, one of the Rikishi would need to win 2 matches in a row against both the opponents. So in the first match, Hoshoryu got a right inside, used it to drag Kimbozan around, drive him back and over into the Shimpans, and that set him up for his final bout against Oho. Now, there's no rest for the wicked as he almost goes straight into the final bout. Oho is trying to Sapari, but Hoshoryu keeps trying to fend him off and get in close. Hoshoryu almost trips over his own feet as he chased Oho across the dohyo. He finally gets a right outside belt, left inside body. He's controlling his position to drive Oho out. Hoshoryu gets in, but he gets hit by a right hand and he's off balance. Hoshoryu gets an outside right belt and drives Oho to the bail, but somehow Oho stays in, drives back, gets a right inside shallow belt, but Oho is not in a great position. Hoshoryu is lower and lifting him. Hoshoryu tries to turn Oho over, but he can't get him. He uses the belt, pulls Oho through with a hand on the back of his neck. Oho's fighting the struggle, but Hoshoryu has control, manages him over the bails. The sheer relief and explosion of emotion on Hoshoryu's face as he realised he'd not only won the Yusho, but more importantly, he'd secured his eventual promotion to Yokozuna. It was an incredible win under immense pressure coming into the playoff, 12-3. It would see him promoted to the exalted rank. His record since has shown to be up and down, a bit of injury as we look for a Yusho win at that rank to silence his critics, but as a fight, as a year, it was quite the bout. So that's it for Fight of the Year, folks. Oho versus Hoshoryu, day 15 January. That's my pick. A few other fights made the final list, including Wakataka Kage and Kimbozan, day 8 on July. You want to see Wakataka Kage repeat his feat that he won Fight of the Year last year against Onosato. Wakataka Kage again versus Kirishima, day 9 September. If you want to see the technical patience and superiority of Kirishima against a quality opponent of Wakataka Kage, day 9 September, that is the fight to watch. Tobizaru versus Yokozuna Terunofuji, day 4 January. That was the Yokozuna's last fight. I was lucky enough to call that one on the live stream. Onosato and Hakuoho, now Hakano Fuji, on day 4 September to see a really good defense by Hakuoho to the big power of the new Yokozuna. So that's all for 2020, folks. Sorry, let me try that again. That's all for 2025, folks. I hope you can join me again in 2026. The January Hatsu Basho is approaching soon. It's New Year's Eve. I'm here in Thailand before I head back to Brisbane for the next Basho. I'll see you on the various streams around and on this podcast. Happy New Year, everybody. Hakioi. Let's learn sumo.